Day 1 kicks off with a welcome and explanation of the purpose and desired outcomes of the 3 days by leadership. Next, a customer will talk about how he sees the future of his organization. We'll graphic record his comments. Then we'll share an outcomes-driven agenda to achieve consensus on our purpose, an understanding of the customer, why transformation is necessary, and a roadmap to the future. We'll review the meeting principles: big hat, little hat, extraordinary conversations, active listening, non-attribution, and the rule of group dynamics. We'll gather any additional principles from the group. We'll do introductions in the form of a team portrait. Participants will share their name, role, desired outcome, and one interesting thing about themselves that no one in the room already knows. We'll do an energizer and team builder exercise called Build a Bridge, which emphasizes the importance of results, process, and relationship. We'll administer the Team Dimensions Profile instrument, which places individuals into 4 quadrants in terms of how they relate to ideas and innovation: creators, advancers, refiners, and executors. We'll graphic record insights from the model and how it applies to the group. After a break, we'll hear more from leadership around the context of the organization as they share why it exists from a customer perspective. We'll graphic record highlights and reactions. Then, in pairs, participants will complete the Golden Circle template, which answers what the organization does, how it does it, and why it does it. We'll graphic record the brief back and facilitate a discussion around any differences that arise from the purpose statements. After lunch, we'll facilitate a discussion on metrics. How do we know when we're there? How are we going to measure? We'll revisit the purpose discussion and add metrics that reinforce achieving our purpose. We'll do a quick customer segmentation, listing out the organization's key customer groups. Then we'll do a dot vote to select top customer segments that we want to explore in more detail. This discussion has the potential of expanding and addressing the key purpose of the offsite. If it does, we'll facilitate and graphic record it. After a break, we'll do a persona profile for each of the top stakeholder groups. The method for completing the persona profiles will be open space, which allows participants to work on the personas that they have the most energy around. Participants will brief out the persona profiles. We'll record the highlights. We'll go back to the How Do We Measure chart to include metrics from the persona profiles. We'll end Day 1 with one-word checkouts and adjourn to an evening team-building event. Day 2 will begin with a welcome, review of the agenda, and morning percolations. We'll record morning percolations. We'll introduce journey maps and give participants time to practice using them. We'll answer any questions and facilitate a brief discussion around how they might use journey maps. We'll record the discussions on usage. We'll revisit the discussion on future customer needs from the day before and ask participants to share any new insights they may have gained on customers' needs. We'll graphic record the discussion. Then we'll again use open space so that participants can complete cover story visions from the perspective of their customers. They'll imagine what success would look like from their customer's perspective in 5 to 10 years. What does their mission look like? What challenges have they overcome? How did they overcome them? What tools are they using? What are their measures for success? We'll debrief the cover story visions and graphic record the themes that emerge. After lunch, we'll look at the role of your organization in the next 3 to 5 years based on the future set by the cover story visions. Small groups will complete templates of what the organization should do more of, less of, and what dependencies there are to make that happen. We'll graphic record the outbriefs of those templates. We'll return to the How Do We Measure chart and gather metrics on the more, less dependencies discussion. After a break, we'll hear about lead, broker, differentiate from leadership and facilitate a conversation around it. We'll graphic record the discussion. Then we'll hear about the A roadmap from leadership, facilitate a conversation around it, and graphic record. We'll again go back to the How Do We Measure chart and gather metrics from the previous 2 discussions. Finally, we'll assign narrative visions as homework and close with one-word checkouts. On Day 3, we'll begin with a welcome, agenda overview, and morning percolations, which we'll graphic record. Participants will share their narrative visions. We'll ask the audience to give one-word feedback. We'll record highlights of the visions and feedback. We'll take a break. Then, based on the narrative visions, we'll have a facilitated discussion about what we are transforming into. What attributes, competencies, and skills will we need to gain or enhance? We'll ask participants to help paint a picture of what the organization looks like in a future state. We'll do a quick introduction to the 4 components of the organization's roadmap. Then, we'll hear about each of the 4 components and have a group discussion to develop mutual understanding. We'll graphic record each briefing and subsequent discussion. We'll have to pause the briefings in order to take a lunch break. After the 4 briefings and discussions, we'll ask small groups to review the future state chart and capture on stickies what needs to change on the roadmap based on that future state. We'll harvest the stickies to a delta chart and have a recorded discussion about those changes. We'll return to the How Do We Measure chart and capture metrics related to the changes to the roadmap. Then participants will do a gallery walk and write up specific actions on stickies. We'll use those stickies to populate an impact, ease of implementation chart. We'll call for volunteers for the high priority actions. We'll end the offsite with leadership reflections and learn, do, thank from participants.